Hi, everybody. This is Tom Broussard calling from Brunswick, Maine. It's an interesting day outside. It's been, we've lost power 3 times in the last week. You can see that I am wearing something that needs to be warm since I couldn't wear my t-shirt with Stroke Diary. But everything else is doing well. And today I'm talking about, and you see the title, Aphasia Recovery and the Princess and the Pea. A little thing can make a big difference. In my particular case, I've continued to try to talk about habit being a tremendous component of how I got better, and then using my habit and the habit of others, how each people may very well get better based on what they were before, based on the habit that they had developed a long, long time ago. In my case, among many other habits, I also had a habit of keeping track of the world around me. So I started using a pocket calendar when I was a kid. My dad used one all the time as an engineer. He urged me to do one as well, and I continued to use his, and then I had my own as I left the house and went to the academy, went to the Navy, and used lots of those little pocket calendars that just helped me understand and stay on track with everything I had to do on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis, basically. So that's what happened with me in terms of getting better after my stroke, because no one really tells you how you're going to get better. A lot of people just do get better. A lot of people don't. And I'm not here to say that everything is hunky-dory and everybody will get better automatically. That's really not the way it is, and not what I'm trying to say. But what really happens is that I did get better, and now I'm doing the best I can to help explain how I got better, and then use that for other people who had their stroke and aphasia and are still wrestling with how they might get better going forward. Because I think that there are some things that you can do that use what we now understand as plasticity and the dependent, experience-dependent activities that induce plasticity. So as a result, people, quote, do get better based on this thing called plasticity. And the way to induce plasticity is a variety of experience-dependent activities, whatever they might be, but they all have to do with how the brain thinks and the cognitive activities that go with the brain when you're considering, as it turns out, considering doing more practice once your time with your speech language pathology is done, because there's still, for all the short amount of hours you get from your therapist, it is still useful for them to do what they do on our behalf, so that we can basically get ready for this new world. When the insurance is over, the therapists are done. If you're lucky, you can get into a stroke group, but now going forward, it is now up to you. And some of it being up to you is you have to study how you had thought before that allowed you to learn what you had learned before, because now you have to learn again. And plasticity happens to be the foundation for learning. So it's not like there's anything magic about this. What did we learn about before? A lot of that had to do with habit for all of us. Makes it a lot easier with your life if you develop these habits. That makes it more smooth with your life based on the habit. It takes less energy. And now after the stroke, you still have to learn in many ways the same way you had learned before. So what was it that you had learned from before your stroke? And in my particular case, a lot of what I got from my parents, my grandmother. You've seen some of that in previous articles. And tonight talking about my dad and what I got from him without knowing that what I was getting from him at that time. Even when I started using them, I really didn't realize, and I don't know if you do either, that when I use these various activities, and using the pocket calendar is a good example, I don't think I ever knew that, boy, if I should just do this when I was in 4th grade, I should do this and somehow I'll get better with the rest of my life. habit doesn't really work that way in terms of you being conscious that if you could do these things, although some people do that too. But I wasn't particularly aware. I just did them because it was fun, and it did help me. And after my stroke, I continued to do what I had always done before, still not really knowing how important they were, that I developed these habits. And if I could use those habits now again after my stroke, that they would continue to induce plasticity, which is to say, help me learn. And learning is what plasticity does in terms of how the brain is able to basically repair your language in the case of aphasia to after my stroke. So it is very interesting to me as I go forward. And that's what happens with this particular article, because a lot of what happens with habit, and I know I continue to talk about habit a lot, whether you're healthy or not, for sure, but especially with people with aphasia, when you are often in a position that you're not necessarily aware of what's happening to the world around you. And it turns out that somewhat accidentally, just because of the way your body has developed over time, that you might start to use your habits and not find out yet that they are still highly therapeutic. So if you do those things, even if you're unaware, but doing those things, you will continue to get better based on the habits that you had before. So then I just started studying what my habits might have been going forward, and started to see that what I had done before really were the headwaters, was the headwaters to how I got better now after my stroke, based on all of these other activities when I was young. So I do a lot of study, which is to say I think a lot about the activities I did when I was young. How did I get to be who I am today based on what had happened before? And every time, I haven't found any that's completely by accident, that just fell out of the sky. I got them from my mom, my dad, my grandmother, my friends, my siblings, all of us continuing to remember what we did before and said, oh, if I did those things before, and it looks like I continue to do some of those things now without necessarily knowing that they were the therapeutic component that helps one get better with aphasia. So with the Princess and the Pea, just happens to be just another component of my habit, given that in addition to the pocket calendar, my dad also had old books that he would read to me when I was young. And Princess and the Pea was one of those. And it turns out that that happened to be a book that I had saved, because when your parents pass, you have to continue to save what they provided to you, and then you have to find a place to keep them, and you get rid of lots and lots and lots of things. But I still saved a couple of things. One was the pocket calendar. Another were some toys of my dad's, old toys, and then also some old books, including one by Hans Christian Andersen, and including various of his fairy tales, including the Princess and the Pea. And as I always had that book with me, it's always on my shelf, I would just continue to remember what it felt like and what I thought about when it came to that pea, from that story that everybody in our country knows about and around the world, that little princess, when she went to bed on top of, dozens and dozens of mattresses, she could still feel that pea. And at least for the story, she could feel it. And that meant that she really was a princess, as opposed to somebody else who wasn't, because she was so sensitive, she could feel the pea. And when she got up in the morning, they said, how'd you do? And she said, it was awful. I could feel that it just felt like rocks or whatever. And not really realizing that pea, as small as it was still going to be felt by who she was through the night. And that's when I began to understand that some of those very insignificant little habits that allowed me to do what I did to make more success with my work and my life, I began to understand that some of those peas were just planted way back in time without really knowing that they would in fact just wait continue to propel me and help me with these various habits, but not yet still knowing that when the day finally come with the adversity, in her case, she had a pee that bothered her through the night. And in my case, I had a stroke, and still didn't know what was still down there behind all of those metaphorical mattresses in my life that allowed me finally to see that those particular activities allowed me to better understand how it propelled the habits then and allow me to continue to use those habits now going forward. Because those habits do help drive the energy that is needed when it comes to plasticity. I've mentioned that before. Plasticity is a kissing cousin of photosynthesis, which converts light into sugars and green leaves. Plasticity converts thought and neurological and cognitive activities into additional neuromatter. That is how we learn. That is how we get better. And all of that happens based on these experience-dependent activities. That just happens to be the way the brain works. It converts those activities into neuromatter. And I've mentioned this to you before, but I'll mention it again. When you lose those cells from a stroke, they are gone. They're never coming back. The reason you do get better is that the remaining cells have the capacity to grow additional, since we're using metaphorically photosynthesis, taking the remaining trees to grow new branches and new leaves. When it comes to the brain, you have the remaining cells. They have that capacity to grow new branches, otherwise called dendrites, and new synapses, otherwise called leaves. And that then allows the construction of additional building the learning field, which is really at the top, that allows you to then understand, not necessarily that you understand it until you can understand it, but it does grow the additional dendrites and synapses so that they create the additional learning field. And as time goes forward, those words you had lost come back. The language you knew before can be spoken. That is the way you learn. It's the way you learned before. You were using plasticity even back then. We just didn't really know. And unfortunately today, most people still don't know a whole lot about plasticity and learning by any other name, whether you are healthy or not. But in this particular case, using this very small little bit of personal history, really, with my dad and pocket calendars and the Princess and the Pea, next year, which is really just a few days from now, but next year I will be talking a lot more about the black box that allows people to better understand what's inside that black box, that allows people to become using more experiences, memories, thoughts that are germinating inside of that black box without yet knowing what it might do for you going forward. So I'll be writing more about that next year. But until then, 2020 has been a difficult year. So I am looking forward to 2021, which is really just a few more days away. And we get back to doing any number of things that hopefully will help all of us do better going forward in 2021. Nice to see everybody. Happy, good holidays. And I will see you next year. Take care of yourselves. See you then. Bye.